Hello, second grade Smarties, and welcome to Wit and Wisdom Module 2, Lesson 9 of the American West. So today we are going to be completing our writing task related to our book, The Plains Indians. So today our pizza bite question is, what does a deep exploration of plants and animals' importance reveal about Plains Indians? So that means, what does learning about the plants and animals during this time in the American West, how did that affect the Plains Indians? All right, so as we move into this time where we think about our writing, we can also think about how we read our writing, right? So yesterday, Miss Mason talked about how we can change our voice to make our reading more interesting. So we have this question. It is a pizza bite question. How do I vary inflection when reading fluency passages? So that means, how do I change my voice when reading fluency passages? Remember, we talked about the different ways that we can let a listener or a reader know that something interesting is happening, something exciting, something sad, that certain words are important. So, for example, we have a fluency passage right here that we are going to read together right now. That's right, you're going to read it with me, okay? But the first time that we read it, I want you to try to copy how Miss Mason talks. Are you ready? Here we go. By taking care of the grass, the Indians took care of the buffalo. In return, the buffalo took care of the Indians and the plains. Buffalo were the Indians' food. They were used to make their shelter and clothing. All right. What did you notice that I did every time I and you read the word buffalo? What did I do when I read the word buffalo? Tell me in the puzzle. I made it sound different than the rest of the words, because what was that fluency passage all about? It was all about buffalo. So let's say that you are going to be reading a fluency passage, or you're going to be reading a book out loud, maybe to a family member, or maybe to a friend, or to another grown-up, or your teacher. And let's say that you want to change your voice to make your reading more interesting, or to put emphasis on certain words. So, what we can do to show emphasis and to keep our minds ready for when we read it, we can go by the passage and underline those important words that we need to put emphasis on with our voice. Yesterday, Miss Mason told you about how we can lower the sound in our voice when we are reading declarative sentences or sentences that tell you something. In this passage, we had all declarative sentences. These were sentences that told you something. If I had a sentence, I had a question, I would raise my voice at the end to let you know I am asking you something. So, friends, when you are reading a passage out loud or you're reading a book, look at what is going on in your book before you read it out loud to see what words you might need emphasis on, what words you might need to change your voice on. So think about how you can make your voice sound more interesting when you are reading out loud. All right, so Miss Mason has already said it today, but today you guys are going to be doing a writing task. Woo! So with every writing task, we have a checklist to make sure that we are answering our informational paragraph completely, right? So we are trying to figure out, how do we choose important points? So here's the deal. Today, you guys are already going to have a topic statement with your writing. You guys are going to come up with your own topic statement with me right now. But when you are writing, you will have a checklist and a guide to help you when you are writing. Okay. So when we are thinking about those important points, those pieces of evidence, they need to support our topic. So we are trying to answer these questions. You are going to pick one. You are not doing both, you are doing one. How were plants important to Plains Indians' lives? Or you are going to answer, how were animals important in Plains Indians' lives? So your topic statement is going to answer that question. Plains Indians needed blank to survive. So there's your topic statement. Your points, so at least 2 points with evidence, your points need to support the topic, but think about what you want your reader to know about that topic. Okay, you are also going to need a conclusion. Remember, a conclusion is like the top bun in a hamburger. It is almost the same as our topic statement. We are re-saying that important topic in our conclusion. And as always, like we talked about when the buffalo are back, topic specific words. So if I'm talking about Plains Indians, I don't just want to say Indians or people. I want to be specific. What kind of Indians? If you're choosing to talk about animals, what specific animals did you learn about with the Plains Indians? And with plants, what kind of plants did they grow to survive? So topic specific words. So if I'm talking about animals, I'm going to talk about the bison, the dogs, and the horses. If I'm talking about plants, I'm going to talk about the crops, the corn, the beans, the squash, and how they use those plants to survive. So we are going to choose what topic statement we want to use. So here are our topic statements. You are picking one. Again, you are picking one. You do not do both. So here are your options. We're trying to answer the question, how were plants or how were animals important to Plains Indians' lives? So here are our options. The Plains Indians used plants to help them survive. So if you look down here, we are going to need 3 points from our book to help us support that topic statement. I need 3 pieces of evidence that support that Plains Indians use plants to survive. And then if you choose to talk about animals, you are going to give me 3 points from our book that told us how Plains Indians used animals to survive. So before we write, we need to use our text to find that evidence. So here is our text that we have looked at for a week. And this is a section that talked about what animals did early Plains Indians need. So our topic statement is the Plains Indians used animals to help them survive. So I'm only going to read a few sections of these pages, and I want you to think, how did animals help Plains Indians survive? Okay, listen very closely. These enormous animals, talking about the bison, provided most of what Plains people needed to live. Plains Indians were experts at hunting bison and at making use of every part of the animal. The clothes they wore and the cone-shaped tents they lived in, called teepees, were made from bison hides. They sharpened the bones of bison and carved them into tools. They used the horns of bison to make spoons, cups, rattles, and toys. They braided shaggy bison hair into rope. Of course, bison were an important source of food too. After men hunted the animals, women cut up the bison meat. They preserved some of it for later by cutting it into long strips and hanging it to dry on racks in the hot sun. Once meat was dried this way, it could be stored for long periods without spoiling. The bison was like a walking store, providing food, clothing, tools, and more. Even bison waste was put to use. Plains Indians used it as fuel for their campfires. Okay, so pause. In the Ed Puzzle, what is one piece of evidence that you learned about animals helping Plains Indians survive? What specific animal helped Plains Indians survive, and how do they help Plains Indians? Tell me in the Ed Puzzle. So on this page, we learned that Plains Indians used every part of bison to live. They used the bison bones for tools, for cups, for rattles. They used the hair to make rope, and they used the hide and the fur to make clothes and shelter. Okay, so there's one point that supports our topic statement. Think about this section. Transportation. Before they acquired horses, early Plains Indians traveled on foot. They relied on dogs to carry heavy loads as they followed bison herds across the plains. They loaded supplies and belongings onto a kind of sled called a travois. A travois was made of two poles tied together in a V shape with strips of rawhide stretched across the V. The travois was attached to the shoulders of a dog, which dragged the load behind itself. Pause. What is a point that would support that Plains Indians used animals to survive? What specific animal on this page helped Plains Indians survive? And how did they help Plains Indians? Tell me in the puzzle. So on this page, we learn that dogs carried most of the things that Plains Indians owned because they traveled on foot. So they used dogs to carry their belongings. Okay, and that is important. Why? Because those Plains Indians traveled on foot. They couldn't carry all of that stuff on their own. All right, and we have one more animal that we learned about. The first modern horses were brought to North America by Spanish explorers in the 1600s. Small early horses had once lived in North America millions of years ago, but they had died out by about 9000 BCE. Plains Indians began to acquire horses through trading with other tribes or by raiding other tribes. By the late 1700s, horses were common among Plains Indians. Horses changed the way Plains Indians lived. With horses, Plains Indians could travel farther and faster than ever before. It made their nomadic lifestyle easier, allowing them to move their camps from place to place as they followed the bison. Plains Indians also found that they could track and hunt bison more effectively on horseback. Okay, pause. What is another point that supports that animals helped Plains Indians survive? All right. So, what specific animal helped Plains Indians, and how did they help Plains Indians? Tell me in the puzzle. So, horses were very important to Plains Indians because they helped the Plains Indians get from place to place, especially those Plains Indians that were nomadic, that did not stay in one place. So, those are three animals that helped Plains Indians survive. Now, let's say that you want to choose to talk about how Plains Indians used plants to survive. Okay, I want you to listen for three important points about how Plains Indians used plants to survive. Farming was the main source of food and wealth for those early Plains Indians that lived in villages. Pause. How did most Plains Indians get their food that lived in tribes? Tell me in the puzzle. What did they do to survive and to get things? They farmed. Farming was the main source of food and wealth for the early Plains Indians that lived in villages. Farming tribes lived on very fertile land along the major rivers of the Great Plains. With plentiful rain and good growing conditions, they could grow more corn and other crops than they needed. Extra crops could be traded with other tribes for metal tools, cloth, bison hides, and other valuable goods. Pause. What's an important point that we learned there? What did some Plains Indians do with their extra food? Tell me in the puzzle. They traded it, right? So they needed the food to eat and survive, but they also used their extra food to trade for things that they needed, like bison hides to make clothes and shelter, metal tools, and other goods. Farming was mainly the work of women. They planted the fields, tended them, and harvested the crops. Their tools were made from things found in the natural world around them. They used animal bones, horns, and antlers to make hoes and rakes. Women also made clay pots for storing food. Now, that section is important to know, but it didn't really tell us about how the food helped them survive. Let's see what else we can learn about these crops. Corn, or maize, as American Indians called it, was the most important crop for most tribes. It grew well in many areas, was easily stored, and could be prepared in a variety of ways. It could be used in soups and stews, or it could be dried and pounded into cornmeal. Women used wooden tools called pestles to grind dried corn into meal. Pause. What was the most important food that Plains Indians grew? Tell me in the puzzle. Corn, right? Why was corn so important to some Plains Indians? It was important because it was the most important crop. It grew well in many areas. Okay. And it was easy to store. It was easy to make different things out of. So in this section, we learn that farming was the main source of food and wealth for some villages. We also learned that some Plains Indians traded their extra crops for things that they needed. We also use that corn was the most important crop that could be used in different ways to help them survive. So, as we are writing, as we are thinking about how we are going to write, we had some important points that we can use to support our topic statement. So remember, you are picking which one you want to use. So if you want to talk about how animals helped Plains Indians survive, you would talk about how they made clothes and teepees from bison hides. You would talk about how the dogs pulled their things when they were traveling on foot. And you would talk about how they used horses to travel farther and faster. If you want to talk about plants in your writing and how those helped Plains Indians survive, you would talk about how they got most of their food from farming. You would talk about how they traded their extra crops for goods. And you would talk about how corn was used in different ways. So you are going to pick which topic you want to talk about and support it with 3 main points. So a topic statement, 3 main points, and a conclusion. And when you are finished writing, I want you to think. I want you to do a checklist in your head. Did you understand how the Plains Indians use plants and animals? Do you understand why those were important? When you are writing, you need to check to make sure you used a topic statement, that you had 3 points that support your topic statement, and you have a conclusion. When you are writing, you want to make sure those points are important and they support your topic. You want to use topic specific words. You want to use simple and compound sentences. So that means putting 2 ideas together into one sentence. You want to make sure that you use capital letters at the beginning of your sentences and with proper nouns. You use punctuations, and you have complete sentences with a subject and verb. So, friends, as you are writing, think about all those things you need for a good, informative paragraph. All right, guys, and let's do a deep dive. So, we have talked about this word a few times, nomadic. Can you say nomadic for me? Nomadic. So, nomadic is a vocabulary word, and I want you to listen to this page as I read about the word nomadic. Some of the Plains Indians groups or tribes had once been farmers in the woodlands of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. These people include the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Sioux. Around 1400, they moved to the Great Plains and adopted a nomadic lifestyle. What do you notice about the word nomadic in this section of the text? How is nomadic different from the rest of the words? Tell me in the puzzle. It's a little darker than the rest of the words. Now, we have talked about how, and Miss Mason is going to grab her Plains Indians book. We have talked about how those darker words on an informational text usually tell us that it is an important word or a word that needs to tell us its meaning. So, where can I go to learn the meaning of the word nomadic? Where would I go in an informational book? What is that section of the book that gives me the definitions or meanings of important words? The glossary, and the glossary is at the end. So if we have a word that is darker than the rest of the words on our page, that means that it is an important word that has a special meaning. So nomadic. If I wanted to know what the word nomadic means, I would go to the end, to the glossary, to the what? The glossary, and I would search for the word nomadic. And all my words are in alphabetical order. So it starts from A, it goes down the alphabet, and nomadic is at the bottom. It says nomadic means moving from place to place without a fixed home. So this is the glossary that gives us the meanings of those important words. But let's say I wanted to find more pages in the book that tell me about nomadic lifestyles. I could also go to the index, and the index is at the end, usually after the glossary. So the index is at the very end, and the index gives us page numbers. If you look, let's see, I'm going to find nomadic. Nomadic. And if you notice on nomadic, it has numbers. And those are the page numbers that talk about nomadic lifestyle. That means that we can find the word nomadic on these page numbers. So what I am going to do is I am going to go to page 18 to see what I learn about nomadic. So I'm going to turn to page 18 and I am going to see what it says about nomadic lifestyle. It says hunting was one of the most important parts of the Plains Indians' culture. Plains Indians hunted many animals, but none was more important to them than bison. We just talked about it. The nomadic tribes moved from place to place to stay close to the wandering bison. I'm going to read that again. The nomadic tribes moved from place to place to stay close to the wandering bison. So what did we learn about nomadic tribes? What did they do? Tell me in the puzzle. They moved from place to place. So just like how we learned that our definition, it says moving from place to place without a fixed home. Page 18 in our book gave us that definition, that they went place to place to stay close to the bison. All right, Smarties, that is it for our lesson 10 or lesson 9. Our next lesson is lesson 10. But remember, Smarties, keep that growth mindset. Good learners do hard things. Happy learning, happy reading, and for my Smarties, happy writing. Bye, guys.